Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Newsmakers. Newsmakers is a show brought to you by the Rock County Civics Academy, where we bring people in the community who happen to be making the news that affects your life on a day-by-day basis. We want to welcome into the JATV studios today one of the longest-seated members of the Janesville City Council, Paul Williams. Paul, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on board. You are, I think, looking back in history, close to, if not the longest seated member of the Janesville City Council in modern history.
Well, I did take a break in between, so it's not a...
it's not consecutive, but...
Consecutive, but yeah.
What keeps bringing you back?
I think my love for the city of Janesville. I'm a lifelong resident, and, you know, I enjoy being part of the process and giving back what I can.
What, in your time on the council, you've seen lots of changes. You've, in 18 years, gone through a handful of city managers and certainly more than a handful of different staff that support the city at various levels. In that period of time, you've seen a lot of advocacy on the part of the community in favor of a particular project, opposed to a particular project. How do you respond to organized public dissent or criticism of your position, especially when it comes to informed active community groups?
Well, I try to look at all sides, and usually there's, you know, like they say, there's more than two sides to a story. There's usually three, if not four or more. Probably thinking back, probably either saving or removing the Monterey Dam was probably one of the biggest controversies that I can think of. And there was a well-organized group of people that wanted to save that. And, you know, after doing all the research and seeing really what that dam, you know, it was made as a diversion, not to make any power. And the repair costs were going to be considerable, although they did have one citizen that said that they would repair it, but he wasn't for lack of a better term, he wasn't a dam engineer, and that wouldn't have been allowed. So you know, that was a very tough decision, and I think we had a lot of people that were, you know, in favor of saving it, were disappointed. But I think looking now, you know, that was the right decision. We certainly have more wildlife that's enjoying the river, and the river seems to be doing well. So you do have those tough decisions, but you have to listen and try to do the best decision that you can.
Well, that takes me to this next question, which, if you could walk our audience through that most difficult decision that you've had to make as a member of the council, or the biggest trade-off that you've had to do as a member of the council, in the hopes that maybe it'll give the community an idea of how you do your homework. How do you prepare yourself for those tough moments?
First of all, I try to not have a decision in the beginning. You know, when you first hear about what it is, you know, because it's really hard to argue with yourself. You want to have an open mind, and to listen to the people. And it is getting more and more difficult, and I'll blame it on the internet, and it kind of sounds like, you know, maybe coming from an old person. But before, you had to do a lot of research, and it was pretty difficult to do. Nowadays, people just get on and Google something. Well, I think we all know that just because it's on the internet doesn't always mean that it's true. So even though it's maybe easier to do some searches, I think you have to do even more searches to make sure that the answer you got from the other search was correct, or was it just made up by AI, or, you know, what it is. So you do your own research. And one thing nowadays, you can certainly look at other cities if they have gone through the same type of situation and how that turned out, and then listen to the citizens. And I know how people feel that if they have a very strong opinion on it and you vote the other way, that you didn't listen to them. That's not really the case. We have 60,000+ people in Janesville. Certainly everybody has an opinion, and in some situations it's very split. So you can't, there's no way that you can please everybody. You have to be able to do your research, follow through on it, and be able to sleep at night knowing that you did your job, whether you were in the majority or the minority. You make the vote that you feel is best for the city as a whole.
Can you give us an example of a time when public input changed your mind or influenced your position on a policy decision?
Well, that's difficult after almost 20 years on the council, a particular one, but I can tell you that there have been many times that, after the initial reading of an agenda item that's coming forward, you do kind of have in the back of your mind, more on the plus side or more on the negative side, and until you really do the research and see what's what's out there and how it's going to be, that you may vote the other way. An example, I guess, just lately, of course, we're dealing with this RFP on possibility of a data center coming to Janesville. And I've done a lot of research on the data centers, more than I ever thought I would have to do before. But when I first heard about it, I was like, I'm not too sure about that. But, and then we had quite a bit of citizen input. We've had, so I wasn't sure at the beginning whether I was going to vote for even sending out the RFPs. But people said, we're against this. We're against this. We don't want this. Well, without an RFP, I don't know what this is. Because data centers are not all cookie cutters. There's different sizes. There's different usages, how they are, the amount of electricity they're taking, the amount of water. There's ones with closed loops, and that technology is changing. So until I know what this is, that's why I voted to at least send out the RFPs, the request for a proposal, to see on this particular case.
It is arguably the bane of civilization, or the greatest tool that has ever been invented when you start talking about the internet. Personal experience, finding truth is a never-ending task, and you can't rely on any one source of information in order to come to a genuinely fair conclusion of this is truth. How do you sort through the myriad of information that's coming not only from the internet, but from the people you run into on the street, the people in public comment? Do you ever get to a point of information overload, and how do you filter it out?
It's difficult at times. I think probably some of my background has really helped. One, I was in the automobile industry, being a mechanic, technician, repairing cars, and you'd get people in that would say, this is wrong with my car. Well, you took that information from them, and you had to figure out if they even knew what they were, what the problem was, and then tried to diagnose that on your own. The other one is, my wife is now retired, but she was an attorney, and I worked with her for several years. And in doing different things in the legal system, you have to try and figure out where the best information is, and see if there's several sources that are telling you the same thing, and figure out if those sources are good sources. It is, again, it's made it easier to search, but it hasn't been easier to get the truth. Prior to the internet, if we read it in the newspaper, it was probably true, or else the newspaper was going to be sued, unless it was the Onion, and then we knew it wasn't true. But nowadays, that's very, very difficult.
Who or what has had the greatest influence over your priorities now that you're in office, and how can constituents verify that you're still working for them and not for somebody else?
Well, um, you know, I know that you help out with different campaigns, and you don't like the way that I campaign, because the way I campaign is I don't spend a lot of money. I have my yard signs from 2000. I still put those out. I do a little bit of advertising, but I've never trusted a politician that would spend millions of dollars on a job that pays $200,000 a year, say. Our job on the city council, as most people know, we don't get paid anything, so I've never really understood how you could spend thousands of dollars running for that job. I live here. My ancestors settled in this area back before it was even a state. I have kids. My son lives here, my daughter-in-law, and 3 grandkids here, and I want Janesville to just be the best that it can be. And my wife and I are on our savings and Social Security, so I always try to make sure that it's still affordable to live here.
These are challenging times. These are challenging times. And there is a point in time where we've seen a change, I think, in how people in communities respond to their public officials and the information that they're able to glean from a variety of sources. There's a craving, it seems, if maybe last Monday night as an example, you had a pretty full house of people who showed up for the discussion on the RFP. I've sat through council meetings where we've had full houses advocating for things like the Woodman Sports and Convention Center. I remember sitting on the council with you, the conversations about the Monterey Dam and whether it was going to be left in place or taken out. When you get in those particular situations, again, it's a matter of filtering the information and listening carefully. Has there been any one of those sort of circumstances where you've sort of stepped back and you've said, golly, I'm not sure I really like doing this tonight? And how do you get through those moments? Because it can't be wine and roses all the time.
No, it's not, but you have to have a thick skin. You have to understand that you are going to not make everybody happy. And whether am in voting, if I voted in the majority or the minority on a particular issue, I never had hard feelings against a fellow council member. They have every right, and I look at it this way too. If the votes were always 7-1, why do they need 7 of us? It could just be a one-person dictatorship. So.
Well, and you'd hope they'd never be 7-1.
Right. Well, I'm sorry, 6-1. Yeah. No, it can't be 7-1. Yeah. But it is interesting, and now that I'm retired, I have more time to go through and try to do more and more research on the different items that are coming up. That are, everything is important. I mean,
nothing is less important than
no.
anything else, and the fact is, it's a continuous learning process for you and the other members of the council.
Yes.
My guest, Councilmember Paul Williams, probably the longest sitting member of the council in modern times, and as always, very informative. Paul, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
That is going to wrap it up for this edition of Newsmakers. Stay tuned. We'll be bringing other folks who make the news in your community to a little bit more human form here on Newsmakers, a product of the Rock County Civics Academy. Have a great day.